Welcome back to True Crime for Sleep. If you're listening tonight, leave a comment and consider liking and subscribing. Now settle in, because you're about to watch payroll checks behave like they belong. It's a rainy Friday in Tacoma, and you're the night fraud investigator with burnt coffee and tired tellers. 3 employees from the same plant show up, same routing numbers, same calm hands, and paper that's just a little too smooth. You pull the images, you compare the signatures, and you realize the handwriting keeps repeating across different names. The check's clear anyway, because the magnetic ink reads clean, and the amounts sit just under your automatic hold threshold. So you stop chasing street forgers and start tracing blank check stock, delivery logs, and private mailboxes rented in batches. And when the cash comes out minutes later at an ATM down the block, you're left with one question. How do you catch a counterfeiting workflow that survives by exploiting hold limits, microtoner, and end-of-day teller fatigue? You stand behind the teller line and let the lobby noise wash over you. Wet coats squeak against vinyl chairs, and somebody's kid coughs into a sleeve like it owes him money. You think this is a robbery, just dressed up in paper and ink. A quick hit, a quick run, a small ring with smaller brains. Wrong. These checks are acting like they have rights here, and the first concrete thing you do before you even finish your coffee is pull the deposit tickets for the last 4 Fridays. You lay them out under the desk lamp like you're reading tarot. Same employer, printed at the top, same bank routing number in the middle, and the amounts, always tidy, always hovering just under the line where your system gets nervous. Congratulations! You are not looking at panic. You are looking at calibration. You walk to the back office where the microfilm reader sits, humming like an old refrigerator. The machine is older than your patience, and both are running out. You scroll through grainy images of checks, each one a little ghost of a decision. The maker's signature is the same hand, over and over, wearing different names like different hats. The endorsements on the back are too neat. Real people sign like they're late for dinner. These signatures sign like they're being watched. You pull one check from the batch and rub your thumb across the paper edge. It is too smooth. Not glossy, not cheap, just wrong in a way your skin notices before your brain catches up. Payroll check stock usually has a bite to it, a kind of crisp resistance. This feels like office printer paper that went to finishing school. You pick up the phone and call the manufacturing plant. You do not ask for the owner or the manager. You ask for payroll because that is where lies go to get printed. A receptionist answers with a voice like she has been saying no all day. You give her the employee names, 3 of them. Slow and careful. She pauses, then laughs once, short and humorless. She tells you those names have never been on their books. She tells you she has worked there 8 years and she would remember. You write it down anyway, because memory is not evidence, but it is a direction. Now, you have to make a choice. You can shut this down loud, freeze accounts, call branch managers, and light a flare. Or you can let it breathe, just long enough to learn how it walks. You look at the clock, it is 4:48 in the afternoon, and the lobby is thinning out. The window for this pattern is right now, between 4:45 and 5:15, when tellers are tired and supervisors are thinking about traffic. So you choose the quiet option. You tell the head teller to keep taking deposits, but to mark the next 3 checks from that plant with a tiny pencil dot. Nothing visible to a customer, just enough to know it was yours. Then you call your operations manager and ask for an exception report on all payroll deposits under the automatic hold threshold. You do not say counterfeit yet. People hear that word and start making mistakes. You say irregular. It sounds softer, like a problem you can fold and file. But you are already feeling the shape of it. A few minutes later, a teller leans back and murmurs your name. Another one just came in. You watch him through the glass, a man in a clean jacket, cap brim low, hands calm. He does not fidget. He does not glance at the cameras like he is afraid of them. He stands like he has stood here before, even if you do not remember him. He slides the check and deposit slip across, and the teller's fingers do the tired little dance of routine. Stamp, scan, smile. You want to stop it. You want to reach over and say, hold it. But you made your decision, and the decision has teeth. You let the deposit post because the check is only half the crime. The other half is where it goes when it turns into cash. You wait until he leaves. You count 10 seconds, then you walk outside into the rain. The sky is low and gray, like Tacoma is holding its breath. Across the street, 2 blocks down, an automated teller machine sits under a buzzing light, and there he is, already there, already pulling money like it was always his. You cannot see the screen, but you can see the rhythm. Card in, pause, hand steady, cash out. No confusion, no learning curve. This is not a guy winging it. This is a guy following a script. He folds the bills once, tight, and tucks them away. Then he walks toward the freeway on-ramp, like that is the only direction that matters. You go back inside and pull the transaction log. The withdrawal is in chunks. 300, 300, 280. Not random, not greedy. This is someone who understands limits, daily caps, and what triggers a fraud alert. That is when the case stops feeling local. A street forger worries about ink and nerves. Whoever built this worries about your policy manual. You return to your desk, and the coffee tastes like burnt pennies. You call the county prosecutor's investigator, a man who has the voice of a locked drawer. You tell him you have a pattern and you have a plant name. You do not tell him you have a feeling, because feelings do not get subpoenas signed. He tells you to bring the checks, copies and images, to a meeting Monday morning. He also tells you something that makes your stomach sink, slow and heavy. He says if it is real counterfeiting, you will need federal eyes. That means Secret Service. The irony never gets old, not really. They protect presidents, and they chase paper. Monday comes with a low winter light and a conference room that smells like carpet glue. You sit at a table with the prosecutor's investigator and a liaison who introduces himself like he is reading from a badge. Windowless room, bad coffee, the holy trinity of delayed justice. You lay out the checks in plastic sleeves. The Secret Service liaison does not touch them at first. He leans in, close, like he can smell the lie. He asks for one more sample, like that will make the world simpler. You tell him you can get more. You tell him Friday is when they come. He nods, and you can see he is already doing the math. He points to the line of numbers at the bottom, the microline, the one machines read like gospel. He says, it looks clean, not just legible, but magnetically correct. You ask him what that means in human language. He tells you the micrer is not just ink. It is magnetic toner, a powder that machines can sense. He pauses, then says the part you were hoping not to hear. This is not a photocopy scam. This is manufacturing. Whoever did this rebuilt the check to fool the machines, not the people. That changes everything. Because machines do not get tired at 5 o'clock. People do. The prosecutor's investigator asks the question everyone is thinking. Where does someone get magnetic toner and the right fonts? Where do they get check stock that feels almost right? And why choose a mid-sized plant in Tacoma? You answer with the only honest thing you have. Because payroll is predictable. Because Friday afternoons are soft targets. And because payroll systems are full of holes disguised as convenience, you leave the meeting with a task list that feels like a weight set. Find the source of the paper. Find the source of the employee names. Find the path of the cash. And do it before the next Friday window. Because the pattern is a habit. Habits are hard to kill, but they are easy to predict. You start with the plant, not the people on the floor, not the managers, but the boring middle layer, the printing, the delivery, the outsourced hands that touch blank stock before ink ever meets it. You call payroll again and ask who prints their checks. The receptionist transfers you, and now the payroll clerk sounds tired enough to be honest. She tells you they outsource printing to a local service bureau, a place that prints checks for multiple companies because it is cheaper than doing it in-house. She gives you a name and an address, a beige building in an industrial strip, the kind you never notice unless you're looking for trouble. You drive there on your lunch break, rain tapping your windshield like impatient fingers. Inside, the air smells like paper dust and warm machines. A manager meets you with a practiced smile that dies slowly as you explain why you are there. You do not accuse. You ask questions that sound polite but are shaped like knives. Where do you get your blank check stock? How is it delivered? Who signs for it? Do you keep logs? He says yes, yes, yes. And yes, because saying no would be insane. He leads you to a file cabinet, and you watch him open drawers like he is opening his own chest. Delivery logs, invoice sheets, a clipboard with signatures that are supposed to mean custody. You scan the dates around when the counterfeit started, and there it is, a small line that makes your throat go dry. 2 boxes of blank check stock signed for on a day the regular dock clerk was out sick, signed by a name nobody in the building recognizes. The manager squints at it, then shakes his head slowly. He says that is not one of ours. He says he would remember someone new handling deliveries because they do not let just anybody touch that stock. You look at the signature again. It is not sloppy. It is not rushed. It is confident, which means whoever signed it had no fear of being checked, or they knew nobody would check until the money was gone. You take copies of the logs and step outside into the cold drizzle. Now you can see the workflow taking shape. Blank stock goes missing. Templates get built. Micro gets printed clean. Checks get deposited at the end of the day under the hold threshold. Cash gets pulled immediately in careful amounts by rotating faces. It is not one crime. It is a production line. You go back to your office and pull your credit union policy manual. It sits on your shelf like a Bible nobody reads. You flip to funds availability, automatic holds, thresholds, exceptions. You feel your jaw tighten. Because every counterfeit check you have seen is hovering just under that number. Not $1 over. Not one impulsive grab. Like whoever did it tested the fence, found the lowest plank, and stepped over without breaking stride. That means they either got lucky or they did their homework. And luck does not repeat this cleanly. So you do the next ugly thing. You call information technology and ask for a list of every new account opened in the last 2 months that received payroll deposits from that plant. They ask you why. You tell them you are tracing a discrepancy. You do not say counterfeit yet, because words travel. An hour later, you have a printout that looks harmless. A list of names, addresses, account numbers, dates opened. But when you read it, the pattern starts talking. Many of these accounts are brand new, opened within days of each other, funded with small cash deposits, just enough to look normal, then payroll checks, then withdrawals, then silence. You circle the addresses and see something you cannot unsee. The addresses cluster, but not in neighborhoods. They cluster in private mailbox rentals, the kind inside shipping stores, suite numbers that are not apartments, but metal doors in a wall. You feel the case shift under your feet, because this is not just paper, it is identity management. Someone is building a stable of names, then feeding them payroll checks like a farmer feeding animals. You pick one mailbox address and call the shipping store. A teenager answers, bored and suspicious. You ask if they rent private mailboxes. He says, yes, like it is none of your business. You ask how many were opened recently under different names. He says he cannot tell you that, and he is right, because you are not law enforcement. Not technically. So you call the prosecutor's investigator again and tell him you need subpoenas. You can hear him exhale on the other end. Slow. This is the part where the case gets heavy, because now paperwork becomes your weapon. He asks if you are sure. You tell him you are past sure. You tell him you watched the cash come out of an automated teller machine 10 minutes after deposit. You tell him you have delivery logs with a ghost signature. You tell him the amounts are tuned to your policy, like someone played it on a piano. He says he will get the subpoenas. He also says something else. Quiet and practical. If this is organized, they might notice pressure. They might move. So you have another decision to make. Do you tighten holds right now and stop the bleeding, risking that you scare them off? Or do you keep things normal? One more Friday to catch faces and routines. You sit with that for a moment, listening to the heater click on and off. Stopping the losses feels good, but catching the engine feels better, because if you only stop it here, it restarts somewhere else with a different bank, a different city, and the same old tricks. So you choose the hard thing again. You keep policy steady for now. You plan to watch Friday like it is a stage performance, because that is what it is. And now you need eyes, not just numbers. You call 3 branches and ask for surveillance polls from the last month. The request gets you groans, because pulling tapes is work. This is 1990, and nothing is easy. A day later, you sit in a small room with a television on a rolling cart. The footage is grainy, fluorescent, and unforgiving. Everyone looks tired. Everyone looks guilty. You watch depositors step to the counter, one after another, different faces. But the posture is the same calm shoulders, the same slight lean forward, the same hand placement on the counter, like they practiced in a mirror. They do not chat. They do not hesitate when asked for identification. They slide it out like a magician pulling a card. Then they leave, and 10 minutes later, the same body appears at an automated teller machine. Or another body does, doing the same sequence. It is choreography, and the choreography tells you something important. These people are not the brain. So you stop staring at their faces and you start staring at their timing. You rewind the tape until the numbers in the corner burn into your eyes. You watch the door open, then the counter, then the exit. Every deposit lands inside the same narrow slice of the day, 4:45 to 5:15, like someone circled it on a calendar with a cheap pen. You think that is just convenience, but convenience does not repeat this cleanly without a manager. You pause the video on one depositor and lean closer to the screen. The fluorescent light makes his skin look gray, like photocopied life. He is holding an envelope the way people hold pay stubs, careful and bored, not excited, not nervous, just acting employed. That is the trick, you realize. Not the ink, the posture. You queue up the next branch. Different lobby, same hum of lights, same fake calm. A woman steps up, hair tucked under a knit cap, hands cracked like winter. She smiles at the teller like they are old friends. Then she slides the check over like it is a library card. When the teller asks for identification, the woman does not blink. She has it ready, already pinched between two fingers. You watch her leave. You watch her turn right. You watch her disappear toward the same 2-block walk to the same automated teller machine. This is not freelancing. This is routing. Someone told them exactly what to do and exactly where. Congratulations, you are now looking at logistics, the kind of logistics people learn running shipments, not running scams. You make a list on a yellow pad because that is how you keep your thoughts from floating away. Deposit time, branch location, ATM used, withdrawal amounts, the card used for the withdrawal, the account name, the proof of address, and then you add one more line at the bottom, the line you really care about, where the debit cards were mailed. Because that is where the scheme has to touch the real world. Plastic cannot be imagined into existence. It has to go somewhere physical. It has to land in a mailbox with a key, and keys belong to people. You call your operations manager again, and you ask for card order records. Not the card numbers, just the shipping address and the date the cards were mailed. He asks if you are building a case. You tell him you are building a map. A few hours later, you are staring at a stack of printouts that smell like hot toner. And there it is again, like a fingerprint you cannot wash off. Private mailbox suites, dozens of them. Same strip mall, different box numbers. The same shipping store address in Fife, over and over. You feel your tiredness shift into something sharper. Because now you have a place that is not virtual. A place you can drive to. A place you can stand outside and watch. But you do not go yet. Not without someone who can stand there legally and write it down and keep it from becoming just another story you tell yourself. So you call the prosecutor investigator and you tell him you need the mailbox applications. You can hear him flipping into that slow, reluctant gear that people use when they realize you are not going away. He says he will serve the subpoena, and he tells you to be patient. Patience is the first thing fraud teaches you, mostly because you have no choice. Friday comes again, and you are in the lobby of your busiest branch. You stand behind the teller line where the public cannot see you clearly. You are just another shadow in a suit, another person who looks like bad news. The head teller is in on it, and her smile is the kind that hurts your face. Outside, rain turns the parking lot into a mirror that shows you nothing. Inside, the air smells like wet wool and hand sanitizer. You keep your eyes on the door, and you pretend you are not waiting. Waiting is a smell criminals can detect. At 4:52, the door opens. A man steps in with a baseball cap pulled low, and his jacket looks new. Too new. He walks with the slow confidence of someone who has done this twice already today. He does not look around like a tourist. He looks around like a renter, checking for mice. He chooses the line with the youngest teller, the one who still believes forms matter. He slides a check across and a deposit slip, and the teller starts her routine. You watch her hands hesitate, just slightly, on the paper. She feels it too. That smoothness, that wrongness. But she does not want to be the person who holds up the line at 5:05, and that is the whole point. You nod once, barely, and she posts it. The deposit hits the account, and now the clock starts. A plainclothes officer, you arranged through the prosecutor, is in the lobby pretending to read brochures. He is not a good actor, but the world is full of people who look uncomfortable in banks. The depositor leaves. The officer follows, a few beats behind. You do not go. You stay with the system, because the system is what is being exploited. You pull up the account, newly opened. Small cash deposit to start it. Payroll deposit every Friday for 2 weeks. Now this one. You check the account holder name. It is a person you have never seen before, with a mailing address that is a suite number, not an apartment, not a house, a box. Your phone rings and you pick up without looking. The plainclothes officer tells you the depositor is walking to the automated teller machine. He tells you the man is not rushing, and that is what scares him. Rushing means fear. This man has a schedule. You tell the officer to watch the withdrawal, then watch the direction of travel. And you tell him one more thing, the thing that makes your own skin tighten. Do not approach. Not yet. Because you are not trying to catch a minnow with a net. You are trying to catch the hand that keeps dropping food into the pond. A few minutes later, you refresh the transaction log. There it is. $300. $300. $280. Like a lullaby. Like the same song played on a broken music box. And the card used is not the same one you saw last week. Different account, different name, same pattern. That means somebody has a stack of these accounts, pre-built and waiting. The depositor does not just have a check. He has infrastructure. He has plastic. He has a mailing address farm. The officer calls again and tells you the man is heading for the freeway on-ramp. Same as before. He disappears into traffic and rain, and Tacoma eats him like it eats everything. When the lobby empties, you go back to your office and you do the boring work that makes criminals furious. You write down everything. You print the account screens. You save the footage. You log the times. You request the automated teller machine camera stills. Then you request the automated teller machine journal, because every machine keeps one, a little diary of what it swallowed and what it spit out. It is not glamorous, But nothing about real cases is. The prosecutor-investigator calls you on Tuesday with the mailbox paperwork. You hear paper shuffling, and then his voice changes. He says the mailbox applications list different names, different handwriting too, at least on the surface, but the contact phone number repeats. The same one, over and over, like the scam cannot help itself. A prepaid cell, it only wakes up on Thursdays and Fridays. You ask how they know. He tells you they pulled call logs from a cooperating carrier and the number only pings towers on those days. Not much else, no girlfriend calls, no mom calls, no doctor appointments, just business. You write the number down and stare at it like it might confess. Then you ask for the one thing that always matters. Who rented the boxes in person? The shipping store does not fingerprint people, but it does keep copies of identification. The prosecutor-investigator says the copies are inconsistent. Different driver licenses, different names. But the photos are close enough that you can feel the scam breathing. Not one person, a small stable, people rotating like tires. You sit back in your chair and let the heater tick. This is the moment where you could get dramatic. You could imagine a mastermind in a dark room, laughing into a headset. But reality is almost always smaller. Reality is a guy with a printer and a guy with access and a couple of desperate people who want grocery money. And somewhere in the middle is the person who knows just enough to stitch it all together. You tell the prosecutor-investigator you want to visit the shipping store. He says he will come with, because now it is officially his problem too. The next afternoon, you drive to Fife. The strip mall looks like every other strip mall, a row of shops pretending to be permanent. There is a nail salon, a sandwich place, a shipping store with a cheerful sign that lies. You walk in, and the bell above the door rings like it is tattling. The air smells like cardboard and tape, and there is a faint chemical sweetness from packing peanuts. Behind the counter, a clerk looks up, tired and suspicious. You show your badge equivalent, which is mostly just confidence and paperwork. The prosecutor-investigator shows the real badge, and the clerk's shoulders drop. People always relax when they realize you are not selling anything. You ask about the mailbox rentals. The clerk says they get lots of them. You ask about a polite guy who paid in crisp 20s. The clerk's eyes shift just slightly to the wall of boxes. That is how memory works. It is not in the words, it is in the glance. He says there was a guy. Yeah, polite, work boots, clean hands for someone in boots. He always asked for a specific box location, low and left, easy to access without standing in front of the cameras too long. You ask if the clerk remembers what kind of car. The clerk says an older sedan, dark, nothing special. That is always the point. You ask if the guy ever brought anyone else with him. The clerk shakes his head. Always alone. Always quick. Always Thursdays and Fridays. Now that you mention it. You ask if the store has surveillance. The clerk points to a dusty camera in the corner that looks like it has given up. The prosecutor-investigator says they will need the tapes. The clerk sighs like you just assigned him homework. He goes into the back, and you stand there pretending not to stare at the mailboxes. Rows of metal doors, each one a little mouth waiting to be fed. Each one a hiding place for a different name. You imagine the debit cards inside, sleeping in envelopes. You imagine the payroll checks going out bright and clean, ready to be cashed. This is where identities go to rest between crimes. The clerk returns with a stack of tapes. You take them like they are fragile, because in a way, they are. A few days of footage is sometimes all that stands between suspicion and proof. Back at the office, you watch the tapes. The quality is worse than the bank footage. The lighting is harsher, but the camera catches what matters. A man in work boots. He moves with the comfortable speed of someone doing a chore. He unlocks the low left box, pulls out a thick stack of envelopes, and sorts them in his car. Not like a thief stuffing pockets, like a payroll clerk handling pay stubs. He sits in the driver's seat and flips through envelopes, tapping them into neat piles. He is organizing. That is what makes your stomach turn. Crime is supposed to be chaotic. This is administrative. You freeze the frame when he turns his head, and the camera gives you a partial profile. Not enough to identify him cleanly, enough to make him real. Then you catch the license plate, just for a second, as the car pulls out. You enhance it the old-fashioned way, which is to squint and argue with yourself. Then you run it through law enforcement channels with the prosecutor investigator's help. The plate comes back to a print and copy shop owner in South Tacoma. A small business, the kind that does flyers, business cards, maybe the occasional wedding invitation. He also sells used office equipment, because that is what small shops do to survive. Printers, copiers, cash registers, the tools that can be innocent or not, depending on who is holding them. You print out the registration and stare at the name. It feels like progress, and progress always feels like relief at first. But then you remember, you are not dealing with one stupid check. You are dealing with a workflow. Workflows do not live in one place. They have redundancies, they have backups, they have people who do not know the whole picture. Still, a name gives you something to push on. You ask the prosecutor investigator what he knows about the shop owner. He says, minor stuff, a couple of civil complaints, nothing criminal that sticks. The kind of person who stays just outside trouble until they do not. You decide to do the next part quietly. No raid yet. First, you want receipts. Paper about paper. So you request purchase records from office supply wholesalers, the places that sell magnetic toner and specialty check stock. Most of them do not want to talk. But some businesses keep loyalty accounts, and loyalty is just another word for a record. You find a hit, a receipt for magnetic toner, a receipt for an MICR font package, and a receipt for blank check stock, not the plant's official stock, but compatible. Too compatible. You line the receipts up and feel the case click. A printer with the right tools, a mailbox farm, a stable of accounts, a set of mules, all tied to one small business owner who knows how to make documents look legitimate. You take this to the Secret Service liaison, because at this point, this is his kind of ugly. He looks at the receipts and nods slowly. He says, "It is enough for a search warrant, if the prosecutor will sign off." But he warns you, because federal agents always warn you. If you hit the shop too early, you might only find leftovers. If you hit it too late, you might find nothing at all. You tell him about Fridays. You tell him about the deposits and the withdrawals. You tell him you think the printing happens in batches, like any other job. He says that is good. That gives you a schedule. Schedules are cages. Now comes the bureaucratic part that makes you want to chew glass. Affidavits. probable cause statements. A judge who will want it clean and simple. You help the prosecutor investigator write it in a way a tired person can understand. You do not write about vibes. You write about evidence, delivery logs with an unknown signature, surveillance of mailbox retrieval, vehicle registration, receipts for MICR materials, bank footage of deposits, and immediate withdrawals. It takes days because justice does not hurry for anyone. Meanwhile, you keep watching Fridays. Every week, you let a few more checks slide through because you need the ring to believe it is safe. You hate yourself a little for it. You hate the part of the job where you let victims happen to catch the engine. But you also know that if you spook them, they will vanish. And then they will do it again somewhere else, to someone else who is not watching. So you keep counting. You keep logging, you keep marking, and you keep your mouth shut because leaks kill cases. By early December, the warrant is ready. December 10th, 1999. Lands on a Friday. Of course it does. That morning, Tacoma is cold in a way that gets into your teeth. The sky is already dark at 4 in the afternoon, like the sun clocked out early. You meet local police and the Secret Service liaison in a parking lot a few blocks from the print shop. You sit in your car with the engine off, listening to the building's heating system hum across the street. It sounds like a tired animal breathing. You watch the shop's front windows, posters in the glass, a neon sign promising copies, fax, printing, all the innocent words that cover a lot of sins. The police are quiet. They are in that calm before action, when everyone pretends they are not nervous. The federal agent checks his watch and adjusts his jacket like it is armor. You are not the one kicking the door, but your heart still acts like you are. Because this case has been living in your head for weeks. It has been walking around your house with muddy shoes. It has been stealing your sleep. Now you are about to see if your instincts were right, or if you have been chasing a shadow with good handwriting. The team moves at dusk. You approach the door, and the air smells like wet asphalt and diesel exhaust. Somebody gives the command, quiet and final. The knock is hard, not polite. Then the door goes. Inside, the shop is warmer, and it smells like toner and paper. Not the friendly smell of a school copy room. The sharper, heavier smell of work done fast. You expect chaos. You expect a messy table, coffee cups, scattered paper, but the first thing you see is order. Drawers labeled in neat handwriting, stacks of blank check stocks sorted by company, a laser printer dedicated to MySAR, sitting like a shrine, payroll templates on a computer screen, open like a confession, and on a shelf, a binder. A thick binder with tabs. The tabs have bank names, credit union names, hold thresholds written in pencil, notes about deposit cutoffs, notes about when supervisors leave. Congratulations, your policy manual has been studied. This is not just forgery. This is customer service aimed at the banking system. An officer calls out from the back room. More paper, more stock, a box of magnetic toner cartridges lined up like ammunition. Another officer opens a cabinet and finds envelopes, hundreds of them, windowed envelopes like payroll distribution, and inside some of them, matching pay stubs, printed to look official, printed to make a mule feel safe, because a mule with a pay stub thinks they are a temporary employee. They think they are participating in something shady, but not catastrophic. They think the worst case is a bounced check, but the real worst case is what you are standing in right now. A counterfeiting shop that does not feel like desperation. It feels like payroll. You walk deeper, slow, because your brain is trying to catalog everything at once. Every drawer is labeled like someone wanted their crimes searchable. Blank stock in one place, finished checks in another, stubs stacked by company and week. On a folding table, a paper cutter sits with a ruler taped to it. The tape has little pencil marks, like a cook measuring portions. You do not have to guess what those marks are for. They are for slicing sheets into checks, quickly, evenly, without thinking. That is the part that makes you tired, because thinking is where people make mistakes. This setup is built to avoid thinking. An officer calls your name and points to a waste bin. It is full of shredded strips, still warm from friction. Not random office trash, but narrow ribbons of numbers and names. Someone tried to clean up, but not fast enough. You lean in, and one strip shows a social security number, not a made-up one, not a placeholder, a real-looking sequence with the right rhythm. Congratulations, this just got bigger than a few fake employees. Because now you are not only chasing counterfeit paper, you are chasing stolen lives. The Secret Service liaison is already in the back room, gloved up, quiet. He is doing that federal thing where he pretends it is just another day, but his eyes keep flicking to the computer tower under the desk. Because paper is evidence. Sure, but data is the blueprint. You watch him tag a printer first, a laser printer with a dedicated magnetic toner cartridge, labeled by hand. He says the word micra again, like it is a prayer. Magnetic ink, character recognition. Clinical name, simple goal. Make machines believe. He points to the output tray, where a half-printed sheet sits frozen mid-lie. Numbers at the bottom, routing and account, aligned perfectly. That alignment is what you pay for when you outsource payroll. That alignment is what they stole. Then the liaison finds a folder on the desktop. It is named something bland, something that thinks it is clever. Templates. Inside, there are file names for multiple companies, not just your manufacturing plant. Other employers in the region, all of them the kind that cut paper checks. Warehouses, small factories, a landscaping outfit, a janitorial service. The kind of businesses where turnover is high and nobody remembers every name. The kind of businesses where a fake employee can hide in plain sight. You feel a cold line slide down your spine. Because this is not a single target scam. This is a menu. And your credit union is not special. It was just convenient. A uniformed officer steps out from behind the counter area, holding a binder like it is radioactive. Ledger. Handwritten notes, dates, and amounts. Deposit plans, branch locations, and something that looks like a schedule. Thursdays and Fridays circled, like a religion. Beside each date, there are initials, not names, not full signatures, just letters. A way to coordinate without leaving a confession. You flip one page. Careful. There is a line that makes your mouth go dry. Real employee names. Real employee identification numbers. Social security numbers again, copied neatly. This is the inside leak you did not want to find. Because printing checks is a skill. But obtaining real payroll data is access. Access means someone is inside the pipeline or close enough to smell it. The officers begin boxing up evidence. Computers, printers, drawers of blank stock, stacks of pay stubs. Everything is tagged, photographed, and sealed in that slow way that makes criminals feel invincible. Because even in a raid, time moves like it is stuck in glue. You stand near the front, listening to radios crackle. The shop is quiet, except for boot steps and paper rustling. And then you hear it. A door in the back. Not slammed, not kicked, just opened with intent. A shape moves through the rear hallway, fast and low. Someone shouts. You do not see the face clearly, but you see the posture. That same calm efficiency you saw on the depositors. The shop owner does not run like a panicked kid. He runs like a man who rehearsed this exit. An officer lunges, but slips on a slick patch near the back threshold. It is raining outside, and Tacoma does not care about your timing. The fugitive is out, into the alley, boots splashing through shallow puddles. You follow to the back door, but you are not the one chasing. You are the one watching it happen, helplessly, because your job is paper. The chasing officers disappear around the corner, radios firing off directions. You stand there with the cold air punching your face, and you realize what this means. A raid is supposed to be the moment the story stops moving. Instead, it just grew legs. Inside, an employee near the computers is acting too still. That kind of stillness is a tell. The kind you learn after too many interviews, too many excuses. He is watching the chaos, calculating his own chances. Then, his hand dips toward the desk. A floppy disk. Old tech, small, easy to hide. He tries to slide it into his pocket like a cigarette. You step closer, and your voice comes out flat. No, just one word, but it lands heavy. The employee freezes, then gives you a look that is pure math. He knows he got caught in a tiny moment that will cost him years. An officer steps in, takes the disc, and bags it. You exhale, slow, because that disc is not nostalgia. It is the week's run, the latest files, the current contacts. It is the thing that will tell you if they were planning another Friday. And now, the man who knows the whole operation is in the rain, running. The radios keep talking. A vehicle was seen, an older sedan, possible direction toward the port. Of course, if you are going to vanish in Tacoma, you head where cargo moves, where containers stack like steel apartments, and nobody asks why you are there. The search team reports a car abandoned near the port of Tacoma. Doors open, keys gone, no blood, no crash, just a clean exit. The suspect used the city like a hiding place, because cities are good at swallowing people. You stand in the shop again, and it feels hollow now, like the building knows it lost its brain. But you have what matters: the workflow, the tools, the ledgers, and that floppy disk, warm from someone's pocket. You try to let that feel like a win, but it is hard to celebrate when the printer walks away. That night, you do not go home early. You sit in a police office, fluorescent lights buzzing like trapped insects. Evidence boxes are stacked against a wall, each one labeled with your exhaustion. You give statements, timelines, explanations. You answer questions from people who just joined the story and need the plot summarized. You do it anyway because that is what cases are. retelling, repetition. You keep your voice steady, because if you let the frustration show, everyone gets sloppy. And sloppy is how fugitives stay free. The Secret Service liaison sits with the computer techs. They are trying to image hard drives without corrupting anything. It is slow, methodical, like surgery performed with a spoon. You watch the progress bar creep forward. You feel your eyes burning. Someone hands you fresh coffee, and it tastes like punishment. Then the first data dump comes through, a directory of payroll files, organized by company name, exported employee lists, check templates, stub layouts, and then a text file labeled with something that makes you laugh. Once. Rules. Inside, the rules are written like a cheat sheet for a board game. Never go over hold thresholds. Rotate branches. Use end-of-day hours. Use new accounts. Keep balances low. Withdraw in chunks. Avoid daily caps. Use prepaid phone only Thursdays and Fridays. It reads like someone studied banking the way you study weather, not to admire it, just to exploit it. There is a second file, and it is worse. Names. Real names. And beside them, identifiers. Social security numbers. Payroll identification numbers. Home addresses. Not for the fake employees. For actual employees at the manufacturing plant. You feel your teeth clench because now you have to face the ugly truth. The counterfeiter did not just invent people. He harvested people. He took their information and used it as camouflage. That means there is an insider, or at least someone with access to the payroll database. And access leaves tracks if you look hard enough. The next morning, you are back at the credit union, but you are not doing teller work now. You are coordinating, you are relaying what you found to the prosecutor, investigator. You are trying to stop the bleeding while the bigger wound keeps opening. Your operations manager meets you in the hallway with a face like a closed door. He asks if you need to change hold policies now. You tell him yes, immediately. Longer holds on new accounts receiving payroll deposits? Manual review on anything matching those employers. Extra verification on private mailbox addresses. The fixes feel obvious now, which is what makes you hate them, because obvious fixes only happen after obvious damage. You draft a bulletin for branch staff. Not panicked, not dramatic, just specific. Look for too smooth paper. Look for repeated signature styles. Look for end-of-day deposits from new accounts. Look for customers who avoid conversation and head straight to the nearest automated teller machine. You know it will help. You also know it will not solve the bigger problem. Because the bigger problem is not your lobby, it is the plant's payroll system, leaking data like a cracked pipe. So you pivot, hard. You go to the manufacturing plant with the prosecutor, investigator, not to the factory floor, not to the loud machines and steel-toed boots. You go to the beige offices, the place where pay becomes numbers. The air inside smells like dust, copier toner, and microwaved lunches. Human Resources sits behind a glass window, like a confessional booth. They greet you with forced politeness. You show them the warrant paperwork for the search you already did. You do not accuse them of anything yet. You do not have to. The evidence will do it for you. Slowly, you ask to see payroll operations. You ask to see the computers used to export employee lists. The payroll manager looks offended, which is a normal reaction to being asked if your house is on fire. She says their payroll printing is outsourced. You tell her you know. You also tell her the counterfeiters have real employee data. That makes her blink. Like her brain just tripped. You watch the moment the problem shifts in her mind. From bank issue to her issue. She leads you to a server closet. It smells like warm plastic and old air. A fan whines, constant, like anxiety. You ask about access controls. Who can log in? Who can export lists? Who has administrator rights? She starts listing job titles, like job titles are locks, payroll clerks, human resources supervisors. A finance manager? She says it like a prayer. Then you ask about after hours. The payroll manager says the office is locked after 5. You nod and you tell her locks are polite suggestions to people with keys. The prosecutor-investigator asks for system access logs, login history, export history, anything that can show who touched the data. And when the payroll manager calls their information technology guy, who arrives with a belt phone and a defensive posture, he asks what you are looking for. You tell him you are looking for after-hours access to payroll software. He laughs once, like it is impossible. Then he sits down at a terminal and pulls logs anyway. Because laughter is not security. The log list appears, and it is boring at first. Daytime logins, normal usage. Then, like a stain, you see it. After-hours access, not once, repeated, late nights, a couple of hours after closing. Export commands executed, employee list pulled. The timestamps are precise because computers are the only witnesses that do not get tired. You ask where the terminal was located. The information technology guy checks the entry. He frowns. He says it is not a payroll office terminal. It is listed as shipping department. You feel the case tighten like a nut pulled hard. Shipping department has no reason to export payroll lists, none that are legal. You ask to see the shipping department. They lead you through corridors, past bulletin boards, and safety posters. The factory hum is louder here, vibration through the walls. Shipping is a big room with pallets and clipboards, scanners and tape guns. A place where logistics live. And logistics, you already noticed, are at the heart of this scheme. In the corner, there is a computer terminal. It sits on a metal desk next to stacks of bills of lading. The screen is off. The keyboard is shiny on certain keys, worn by fingers. You look at the shipping supervisor, a thick-necked man with a tired face. You ask him who uses this terminal? He shrugs. Shared terminal, he says. Lots of people. Temps. Seasonal help. Anyone who needs to check a shipment or print a label. It is the kind of answer that tries to be normal. But normal does not explain payroll exports. You ask if anyone stays late. He says sometimes. Catch up. End of quarter rush. Then you ask the question that makes small lies collapse. Who stayed late on the specific nights in the log? He says he cannot remember. You nod, because of course he cannot. Memory is convenient that way. So, you ask for badge swipe logs. The plant uses badges for access, because everyone does, and everyone trusts them. Badges record who entered and who left. They do not record why, but why is not your problem. Yet, who is enough? The human resources manager looks uncomfortable, but she pulls the logs. You sit in a small office while she prints pages. The printer whirs, and the paper comes out warm. You scan the times. Those late nights. Those exports. And there it is. One badge. Over and over. Staying late after everyone else clocks out. A temp worker. Recently hired. A name you do not recognize. He enters before close, stays after, exits alone. Always on the same nights the payroll exports happen. Always about 2 hours before counterfeit checks show up the next day. It is not proof of guilt yet, but it is proof of proximity. And proximity is where you start squeezing. You ask for his personnel file. The human resources manager hesitates, then hands it over. A thin folder, because temp workers are not treated like long stories. Application. Copy of identification. Address. Emergency contact, usually blank or fake. You look at the address, and the air seems to get colder. It matches one of the private mailbox suites. Not his home, not his apartment. A rented metal door in a strip mall. Congratulations, the inside leak just grew a face. You look up at the shipping supervisor. You ask if he knows the temp well. He says the guy is quiet, shows up, works, does not cause trouble, stays late without being asked, which the supervisor describes like it is a virtue. You imagine the temp worker alone at night, factory quieting down, fluorescent lights buzzing. You imagine him at the shared terminal, plugging in a disk, exporting payroll lists, then walking out with data in his pocket like it is just another shipping label. You ask where the temp worker was recruited from. Agency, the supervisor says. A local staffing company. You make a note. Agencies keep records too, and records are how you turn suspicion into a case. Before you leave, you ask payroll another question, whether pay stubs are ever printed in-house. The payroll manager says no. The bureau prints checks and stubs. Employees get them in envelopes at work or mailed sometimes. You show her the pay stubs found in the print shop. Her face tightens. She studies the stub layout, and she says something you did not expect. It looks right. Not similar, not close. Right. Same formatting, same deduction line placement, same company logo position. Which means the counterfeiter did not guess the stub layout. He had a copy. He had an example. He had access to real pay stubs, or the template files, or both. The payroll manager's voice goes small. She asks if real employees are in danger. You tell her their identities are, at least. And identity theft is a slow kind of violence. It does not stop when the check bounces. It keeps showing up in your mailbox for years. You leave the plant with a stack of printouts and a sour feeling. Because now you have two threads: the fugitive print shop owner who built the production line, and the temp worker inside the plant who fed it with real data. Threads that are tied together even if you cannot see the knot yet. And you know what comes next. You have to find the temp worker before he realizes the shop got hit, before he disappears into whatever hole he crawled out of. The prosecutor-investigator puts out a request to locate him. Not an arrest warrant yet, not enough, just to pick up an interview. The kind of request that often turns into nothing. Because temps move, they vanish, they quit without notice. But you have one advantage. Your criminals love rituals. They love Thursdays and Fridays. They love that diner booth, whether you know it yet or not. And they love money, which means they will keep trying. So you pull back to the bank side again, because you need the mules. Mules are the least stable part of the system. They are also the most human. They make mistakes because they are scared, or broke, or both. You sit with account opening files in a conference room, flipping pages until your eyes blur. Each file is a small life someone pretended to have. A name, a signature, a copy of identification, a mailbox address, a phone number. You stare at that phone number the way you stare at a stain you cannot scrub out. It sits there, harmless ink, pretending it is not the hinge holding the whole door together, because names can be fake and addresses can be rented. But phone numbers are habits, and habits, unlike people, love to repeat themselves. So you do the unromantic thing. You start building a contact web from a prepaid cell that only wakes up on Thursdays and Fridays. You ask the prosecutor, investigator for a pen register order. The legal kind, the kind that makes a judge sigh. You get it, eventually, because paperwork is how the system admits it has a problem. Then you wait, because waiting is 90% of this job, and none of it looks good on television. Thursday night comes, and you sit in your office with the lights low. You listen to the buildings settle, the vents ticking like they are counting down. The prepaid phone pings a tower near Fife. Then it pings again, farther south, like whoever carries it cannot sit still. And then, around 9, it calls one number. One, it is a landline, which is almost quaint, like someone still believes in chords. The address comes back to a small apartment complex off South Tacoma Way. Not the print shop, not the plant, just a place where a person could hide in plain sight behind thin walls and loud neighbors. You get the name on the landline account, and it is not your fugitive. It is not your temp worker either. It is a woman in her 50s with no record, no obvious connection, and an overdue utility bill. Congratulations, you have found the kind of person criminals love. Not an accomplice, not a mastermind, a utility. Someone whose identity can be borrowed the way you borrow a cup of sugar. You do not kick in her door. Not yet. You send a uniform to do a soft knock, a casual contact, the kind that does not spook a neighborhood. The officer comes back with a report you expected. She says she barely uses the phone. She says her nephew visits sometimes and helps her with groceries. She says he set up her phone line because she does not understand the new stuff. And she says his name, and you feel the case lean forward in its chair. It matches the temp worker's first name. Not proof, but it is a thread, and you are tired enough to tug it hard. You pull the temp worker's file again, and you look past the address. Emergency contact, blank, employer history, thin, but the staffing agency listed is real, and real places keep real records. So you drive there, to a low building with motivational posters and a carpet that smells like old rain. The receptionist at the agency smiles like she has practiced it for years. You ask for the temp worker's application packet? She tells you she cannot release it without authorization. The prosecutor investigator flashes the right paperwork, and the smile becomes a line. They bring out the file. The application is filled out neatly, too neatly. References that go to disconnected numbers, a prior address that is another private mailbox, and a photocopied driver license that looks just a little too clean, like it came off a good machine. You check the signature, then you check it again, because It has the same feel as the endorsements on your counterfeits. Practiced, careful, a signature that does not belong to a life, it belongs to a plan. You ask the agency who interviewed him, a coordinator, a young guy with a tie that looks rented. He says the temp worker was polite. He says he was eager. He says he asked for shifts that let him stay late. The coordinator laughs and says, "Who does that?" You do not laugh. You ask for the time cards. Clock in and clock out records. For the plant assignment, they print them, and you already know what you will see. Late nights. Pattern nights. Nights that line up with payroll exports and Friday deposits. Then you ask the question that makes the coordinator swallow. Who else did he bring in? Because recruiters are not always employees. Sometimes they are feeders. Sometimes they bring friends, cousins, anyone with a pulse and a need. The coordinator says the temp worker recommended 2 other people. Both got placed. Short term. Both gave the same kind of mailbox address. Both stopped answering calls after a few weeks. You write the names down and you feel the Mule problem widening. Not just depositors, infrastructure people, people who touched shipping and labels and access points. You walk out of the agency with copies and the cold air feels sharper because now your inside leak is not a single leak. It is a hose. Back at the credit union, you pull the account files for those 2 other names. Sure enough, the opened accounts, small cash funding, payroll deposits, fast withdrawals, then dormancy. They were not just working a job, they were working your system. And now you have to do the part that makes you feel like a bad person, doing a necessary thing. You start picking them up. Low-level warrants, failure to appear stuff, unpaid tickets, anything that gives you leverage without giving away the whole play. January hits with that post-holiday cruelty. Bills stacking up, heat running, people realizing their temporary hustle did not buy them a new life. It bought them a week. You coordinate with local police because you cannot knock on doors alone. Not when you are the banking guy. You start with the easiest one. A depositor from the tapes, the woman in the knit cap. She lives in an upstairs unit that smells like old frying oil and laundry detergent. You hear a television inside, loud enough to hide fear. The officer knocks, and you stand off to the side, letting the badge do the talking. She opens the door a crack. Her eyes flick to the uniform, then to you. You can see her trying to figure out which kind of trouble this is, because there are many kinds, and people who live close to the edge learn the difference. She is brought in on a bench warrant. Nothing dramatic, just a ride in the back seat. Hands cold, mouth dry. At the station, you sit across from her in a room that always smells faintly of bleach. The light overhead buzzes. The chair is bolted down because the world expects everyone to run. You slide a still photo across the table. Her at the teller line. Her at the automated teller machine. Her face is soft in the picture. Tired, ordinary. She looks at it and winces like it is a picture of a bad haircut. You ask her where she works. She says she does not. You ask her why she deposited a payroll check from a plant she cannot name. She says, "It is not like that. It is always not like that." She tells you the story you already expected. A guy paid her to cash her own check because his account was locked. He said it was his payroll. He just could not deposit it. He promised her a cut. She needed groceries. She needed her kids' medicine. She needed something to stop the month from chewing her up. And the story has all the right words: desperation, mistake, innocence. But it has no details. No employer name, no job location, no supervisor. Just a guy. Always a guy. You let her talk until the air goes stale. Then you do the thing criminals hate. You become boring. You pull out the mailbox footage still, the man in work boots. You pull out the print shop receipt copies, magnetic toner, micro package, blank check stock. You pull out the badge swipe logs from the plant. Late nights, one temp worker badge, again and again. Her eyes track the papers like they are falling dominoes. She does not understand all of it, but she understands one thing. This is bigger than her. And bigger means she is not safe. She asks if she is going to prison. You tell her the truth, the kind that lands like a weight. That depends on whether she keeps lying. You offer her the oldest deal in the book, less pain now for more truth. She shakes her head and says she does not know anything. You nod like you accept it. Then you say a name, the temp worker's name, and you watch her flinch, tiny, involuntary, the body confessing before the mouth. You do not pounce. You just let the silence do its work. Finally, she says, "He told me to call him Thursday night. He told me Friday was payday. He told me to meet him at a diner off Interstate 5. Always the same booth, facing the door. He liked the door. Of course he did. People who do bad things love to watch entrances. They think it gives them control. It does not. It just gives them a better view when control leaves. You ask her which diner. She names it. A low building with neon that buzzes in winter. A place where coffee is brown and heavy and the seats stick to your skin. She says he paid in cash. Crisp 20s. She says he never used a card. She says he did not drink much, just sat, watched, and waited. And then she says something that makes your stomach tighten. He told us the company knows where you live. He said, do not try anything because we have your identification. He said it like a fact, like a policy, like he read it from a binder tabbed with fear. You end the interview and step into the hallway. You feel the fluorescent light drain you. Because now you have what you need. A ritual, a place, a predictable Friday. And predictable Fridays are the only mercy criminals ever give you. You debrief with the prosecutor investigator and the Secret Service liaison. They want the fugitive printer. You want the recruiter, because the recruiter is the connective tissue. The recruiter is the one who touches mules, mailboxes, and plant terminals. The recruiter is the one who panics when pressure rises, and panic makes mistakes. You plan the sting for late January? Not too soon, not too obvious. You let another week pass carefully because you need the recruiter to believe the operation is bruised but alive. That part tastes bad in your mouth because every week you wait, more counterfeit paper tries to become real money. But you tighten holds now, you slow the bleed, and you watch for the ring to adapt. They do. They always do. The next Friday, the deposits shift to a different branch. Not your busiest one. A smaller one with fewer staff. They try to use familiarity as camouflage, but you have already told the branches what to look for. Too smooth stock, end of day timing, new accounts, sweet addresses. The teller flags it. The check is accepted. but delayed. Manual review. The mule stands there, smile tight, and you can almost hear the phone call that happens after. The operation adjusting. The recruiter needing to reassure people, needing to meet them, to keep the machine fed. Which brings you back to the diner, the night before the sting. You drive past it, just once. You do not go in. You just watch the parking lot. You watch headlights sweep across the wet asphalt. You watch people come and go. Ordinary hunger, ordinary lives. And you tell yourself, this is just another Friday for them. But not for you. Friday arrives cold and clear, the kind of winter day that makes everything feel exposed. You meet the team in an unmarked car behind a grocery store. 2 local detectives. 1 uniform, kept out of sight. The prosecutor investigator. And you, the banking guy, who somehow ended up planning a diner stakeout like you are in a cheap novel. Everyone gets roles. 1 plainclothes pair inside, eating pie like they belong. 1 pair outside, watching the lot. A recorder on the cooperating mule. If she shows, and you, tucked in a corner booth with a sightline you do not deserve. You go in early. The air inside is warm and thick with fryer grease. Coffee pours in a steady stream, like the building is trying to sedate the world. You choose a table where you can see the booth facing the door. The booth the mule described. The booth the recruiter likes. It is not special, vinyl cracked, table scarred with old burns, but it is positioned perfectly to watch the entrance, which is why he chose it. You sit and wait. You listen to silverware clink. You listen to a couple argue softly about rent. You listen to a cook call orders in the back like a tired choir. Time passes wrong, the way it always does when you are waiting for someone who might not come. At 6, the door opens and you feel your shoulders tighten. A man steps in, not the fugitive printer. This one is younger. Work boots, clean jacket, hair neat, eyes scanning. He pauses, just long enough to read the room. Then he walks toward the booth facing the door. You see him slide into it like it belongs to him. He keeps his hands on the table, fingers still, stillness again. That administrative calm. You want to hate him for it, but hate is loud, and you need quiet. The cooperating mule is supposed to come in next. She does 10 minutes later. Face pale, coat too thin. She walks like every step is a decision she regrets. She slides into the booth across from him. You cannot hear the words, not from this distance, not over the diner noise, but you see the exchange. He pushes a small envelope across the table. She pushes something back, cash, folded, or maybe a card, or maybe nothing, because maybe she is too scared to play it right. The recruiter opens the envelope, glances inside, and his jaw tightens. You see it. The moment he senses something off. Maybe the stack feels wrong. Maybe the cut is wrong. Maybe her hands shake in a way they did not before. He looks up and his eyes sweep the room again. And this time, his gaze lingers, not on you, on the plainclothes pair pretending to be a couple. On the way, the man's posture is too alert. On the way, the woman is not really eating. He does not bolt. Not yet. Instead, he does something worse. He reaches into his jacket and pulls out a folder, manila, thick. He sets it on the table like it is normal, like it is paperwork for a job. And then he opens it. Inside are checks. Freshly printed payroll checks. You can tell by the way they catch the light. Not glossy, but new. He flips through them, showing her like he is proving legitimacy. Like, see? This is real. You are safe. Your stomach drops. Because he is not here to collect only. He is here to distribute. This is the pipeline in motion. And the folder means the operation did not die with the print shop raid. It just relocated. Or it diversified. Or it had backups. Of course it had backups. Workflows love backups. You wait for the signal. The detectives inside are watching too. They give it when they see the folder. Subtle. A hand to the face. A shift in posture. And then the uniform comes through the door like a weather change. The recruiter sees the uniform instantly. His eyes widen, and for a split second, the calm slips. He shoves the folder toward his jacket like he can hide it inside himself. He stands up fast, knocking his coffee, brown liquid spilling like a small disaster. Chairs scrape. A couple gasps. The waitress says, "Hey," without knowing what "hey" means in a moment like this. The detectives move. They are quick, practiced, but reality is messy. The recruiter tries to turn, to slip past, to use the narrow aisle. He makes it 2 steps. Then a hand grabs his arm. He twists. He almost breaks free. You see how close it gets, and you feel your heart punch. Then the second detective hits him at the waist, drives him into the booth, vinyl squealing. The folder drops to the floor and opens like a mouth. Checks scatter, a few slide under tables, a few land in spilled coffee, and for one strange second, the crime is just paper on linoleum. Then the recruiter is cuffed. His face pressed sideways against the table, his cheek against sticky syrup residue. And he looks less like a mastermind now. He looks like what he is, a middleman caught between bigger teeth. You stand and approach slowly because you are not the hero here. You are the witness, the banker who followed a pattern until it led to a booth. The recruiter is pulled up and guided toward the exit. His eyes flick to you, not pleading, not angry, just calculating, still doing math. Even now, outside, the air is cold enough to sting. They put him in the back of an unmarked car. He says nothing. He breathes through his nose, slow. He tries to look like a man who expected this, but his knee bounces. Tiny, fast, and you think, good. Let him feel it. You take the folder back inside, carefully, like you are carrying something fragile and poisonous. You gather the checks off the floor, one by one. Some are soaked in coffee, some are bent, some are pristine. You look at the company name printed at the top. It is not your manufacturing plant. It is another business across town, a different payroll account, a different pool of victims. Proof in ink and toner that the operation was ready to jump industries without missing a Friday. Congratulations, you stopped a branch, not a tree. Back at the station, the recruiter sits in the interview room. Same buzzing light, same bolted chair. Now it is his turn to feel how slow time can move. He gives his name. He gives a date of birth. He gives you the performance of cooperation. You lay the checks on the table in front of him. He looks at them like they are not his, like they just appeared. You ask him where he got them. He says he found them. You nod like you have heard that before, because you have. You ask him where the printing happened. He says he does not know. You slide a photo across the table. Mailbox footage, work boots, his posture. Not perfect, but close enough to make him swallow. Then you slide the badge swipe log, temp worker badge, late nights, shipping terminal, export times. He stares at the paper, and you watch his eyes track the timestamps. He knows exactly what they mean, which tells you exactly what he did. You ask him why he exported employee lists. He says he was curious. That one almost makes you laugh. Curiosity is what you call it when you do not want to say theft. You lean back and let silence stretch. Silence is not a trick. It is a mirror. People talk to fill it because they cannot stand seeing themselves. He finally says, "I was just helping." There it is. Not innocent. Not guilty. In his mind, useful. You ask who he was helping. He stares at the wall behind you. He says, "A guy." Always a guy. You ask for the guy's name. He says he does not know it. You ask where he met him. He says at a copy shop. Now we are back where we started. Except the copy shop owner ran. You ask him if he knows the owner's real name. He hesitates. And in the hesitation, you see fear. Not fear of prison. Fear of the person who is still out there. He says he knows him as Rick. Maybe it is real. Maybe it is not. Nicknames are how criminals keep distance. You ask him where Rick is now. He says he does not know. Then he says, "He told me if anything happened to stop calling. He told me the phone would be dead." You ask him about the prepaid phone number. He denies it. Too fast. You let the denial sit in the room like a bad smell that refuses to leave. You do not argue with him because arguing is for people who need to win. You just reach into your file and slide a phone record across the table. It is one page, clean black ink, tower pings, and a single outgoing call. You tap the Thursday night timestamp with your fingernail. His eyes drop to it, and his throat moves once. Congratulations, you have found the point where his story stops being a story. He tells you it is not his number. He tells you he borrowed a phone sometimes. He tells you everybody borrows phones. You nod, like you are considering the philosophy of borrowing. Then you slide a second page over. Slower. The landline subscriber information. The woman in her 50s. The address. You watch the recruiter's jaw set because he knows you knocked on her door. He knows you use the same soft voice criminals use to collect rent. You ask him who she is. He says, "Auntie." "Not my aunt," he adds quickly, like labels matter more than truth. You ask him why a business arrangement needs an auntie's phone line. He stares at the wall again, and you can almost hear him counting risks. Because this is what you are really interviewing, not him. You are interviewing his fear. You offer him a deal without calling it a deal. You tell him you are not interested in mules forever. You tell him you are interested in the person who prints and plans. You tell him the print shop owner ran, and someone will pay for that. He understands that sentence better than anything else you have said, because middlemen always know when the ladder gets kicked away, they fall first. He asks what you want. You tell him you want the next meeting, where cash gets handed off, where checks get distributed, where the person above him feels safe enough to breathe. He laughs once, dry and short. He says, "There is no next meeting." He says Rick is gone. He says the phone is dead, and it will stay dead. You tilt your head and look at him like he is a dog insisting the door is locked. Then you ask him something simple. If Rick is gone, why did you show up at the diner with a folder of fresh checks? He opens his mouth, then closes it. The truth is stuck behind his teeth, and you can see it pressing there. He finally says, those checks came from someone else. A different guy. A friend of Rick. Someone who does the printing now. You ask for a name. He says he does not know names. He knows faces. You ask for a place. He hesitates, then says, a garage. Of course it is a garage. Crime loves garages the way raccoons love trash cans. You ask where the garage is? He says he got picked up, blindfolded. You let yourself almost smile, because blindfolds are theater. Nobody blindfolds a person they are going to trust with cash and silence. You tell him that. You tell him blindfolds are for making people feel small. He swallows again, and his knee starts bouncing harder under the table. You change tactics because tactics are all you have. You ask him about the plant terminal. You ask him how he got payroll access. He says it was open. He says the password was taped under the keyboard. That part you can believe because humans are consistent in one way. They love convenience more than security. You ask what he exported. He says lists, just lists. Names, social security numbers, pay rates. He says he did not understand it all. You ask him why he needed pay rates. He looks at you like you are stupid. Then he catches himself and looks away because pay rates tell you how much a check should be without looking greedy. They tell you what looks normal, what flies under a hold threshold, what keeps a mule calm. You let that hang because it is a quiet confession. Then you ask him about the pay stubs. You ask him how the stub template got into the print shop. He takes a breath through his nose and says, I printed one stub, he says, from the system, to show Rick what it should look like, because mules need a story they can hold in their hands. Congratulations! Now you are watching fraud become customer support. You stop the interview there, not because you are satisfied, but because you are done giving him time to rehearse. You leave him in the buzzing light with his thoughts, and you step into the hallway. The prosecutor's investigator is waiting, leaning on a cinder block wall like it owes him money. You tell him what you got and what you did not. No garage address, no full name for Rick, no promise of a next meeting, just a middleman and a widening circle of maybes. The Secret Service liaison joins you, eyes tired, voice flat. He says the recruiter is a start. He also says starts are not convictions. He asks if you found anything in the recruiter's car. You tell him about the checks, the folder, the new company name. He nods and tells you the lab will compare fonts, toner composition, alignment. He says if the new checks match the print shop workflow, you can argue continuity. If they do not match, you have a second printer. A Hydra problem, he calls it, like he is trying to make it sound academic. But you can hear the irritation underneath, because cutting heads off is easy. Finding the body is hard. The search team goes through the recruiter's car again, slower this time. They empty the glove box, the trunk, the spare tire well. They find the prepaid phone, not the number you tracked, a different one. No contacts, no texts, just a few missed calls that look like ghosts. They find a stack of blank deposit slips from 3 different banks, not just yours. They find a receipt from a shipping store, not the Fife location, another one farther south. Same kind of private mailbox rental, same handwriting style on the form, different address, same idea. You stare at it and feel the scam shifting again. It is moving like a cockroach when you turn on the kitchen light. The prosecutor's investigator tells you they will get a warrant for the new mailbox location. You nod because you are used to waiting for paper that authorizes more paper. In the meantime, you do what you can do without a warrant. You go back to the credit union and you pull every single account tied to private mailbox addresses, not just the ones from the plant, all of them. You cross-reference deposits, withdrawals, paycheck issuer names, branch times, and you find the uncomfortable truth. The ring did not start with the plant. The plant was just the first place you noticed it. There are scattered hits going back months, small and forgettable. A janitorial company check here, a landscaping payroll check there. Always just under holds, always withdrawn fast, always ending in dormancy, like someone testing recipes in a kitchen, tasting, adjusting, tasting again. You flag them all, and the list gets long enough to make your eyes ache. Now you have to do the other part of your job, the part nobody thanks you for. You call other institutions. You call a bank across town, then another credit union, then a community bank in the next county. You do not call them with drama. You call them with specifics. Check stock feels too smooth. MICR reads clean. Amounts sit just under holds. New accounts use private mailbox suites. Deposits cluster at end of day. You can hear the silence on the other end because you are describing someone else's problem. Then one fraud manager exhales and says, "We have seen that. Not your plant," she says, "but the pattern. Different employer name, same behavior." She tells you they wrote it off as isolated. They thought it was one stupid forger. You tell her it is not stupid. It is disciplined, and disciplined is contagious. You share what you can, and she shares what she can. Not everything, because banks guard embarrassment like it is cash, but enough to draw a wider map. The ring has been working a corridor along Interstate 5, Tacoma, Fife, Federal Way, Kent, southward, always near freeway access, always near quick exits, always near anonymous parking lots. It is logistics again, like a signature. You take that map to the Secret Service liaison, and he rubs his eyes. He tells you fugitives love the port for a reason. Containers, crews, day labor, cash jobs, paper identities. He says if Rick is smart, he is not sleeping in Tacoma anymore. He is moving, he is printing somewhere quieter, somewhere with fewer eyes. You ask what you do now? He tells you the part you hate. You keep squeezing the mules. You keep tracking the mailboxes. You keep tightening holds and watching where the scheme tries to leak out next, because pressure does not stop crime. It just redirects it. That is the real lesson you keep learning, like a bruise you press to see if it still hurts. Late January becomes a routine of interviews and paperwork. You pick up another mule, then another. Some cry. Some get angry. Some act bored, because boredom is armor. Most of them tell the same story. They were paid to cash their own checks. They were told it was payroll. They were handed pay stubs and envelopes like props in a bad play. They were told the company knew where they lived, and it did, because it had their identifications on file. That threat works better than a gun because it lasts. One mule tells you something useful, almost by accident. He says they were told to dress clean. No work uniforms. No stained hoodies. They were told to look like new hires. Because new hires look uncertain, and uncertainty looks normal at a bank. You write that down, and you feel sick at how thoughtful it is. Then the mule mentions a detail he thinks is nothing. He says Rick hated inkjet printers, said they were sloppy, said only lasers were worth a damn. You glance at the Secret Service liaison when you repeat that. The liaison nods because yes, laser printers give crisp edges, consistent alignment, predictable output. Inkjet bleeds, smears, makes mistakes. And criminals who run workflows hate mistakes. You ask the mule how he knows that. The mule says, Rick talked about it, like he was bragging about a car, like he wanted them to understand they were safe. Safe because the machine was good. That is the psychology of it. You are not just counterfeiting money, you are counterfeiting confidence. The recruiter sits in jail while you build what you can around him. His public defender calls. The prosecutor weighs charges. Forgery, identity theft, possession of stolen property, conspiracy. The words stack up like boxes in an evidence room, but every charge still points to the same missing person. Rick, the man who ran out the back door and left everyone else holding paper. You push for a photo lineup on the mail store clerk, hoping the recruiter's face will click. The clerk looks at the photos and shrugs. Maybe, he says, he is not sure, and maybe is not a handcuff. You request the recruiter's fingerprints, and you compare them to what you can lift from the print shop. But paper is terrible for prints. And printers are worse. Everything is handled too much, wiped too often, contaminated by normal life. You get partials, you get smudges, you get the kind of evidence that makes juries squint and defense attorneys smile. So you go back to what worked in the first place. Behavior, timing, process. You sit with the Service Bureau delivery logs again, and you dig deeper, not just the day the blank stock went missing, but the entire month around it. Who was sick? Who filled in? Who signed? Who accepted deliveries? You ask the manager if they have any security camera coverage of the dock area. He looks annoyed, then embarrassed. He says they do not. It is a beige industrial building, he says. Nobody expects a heist of paper. You tell him, criminals love the things nobody expects. You ask about the delivery company, the courier service used that day. You get the name and call them. They give you a route sheet. They give you a driver name. They tell you he does not remember who signed, because drivers see 100 doors a day and forget them all. You ask if the driver remembers anything odd. He says, there was a guy waiting, already outside, work boots, acted like he belonged there, signed fast. The driver thought he was helping, saving time. Congratulations, your whole case is built on saving time. You ask if the driver can describe the guy's face. He says, not really. Hat, average build. Nothing special is how most crimes succeed. The prosecutor's investigator gets the warrant for the second shipping store mailbox location. You go with him again because now this strip mall smell feels familiar. Cardboard, tape, cheap cologne. You show paperwork, and the clerk this time is older, sharper. He does not want to help you until he realizes you are not asking. You pull the mailbox applications, and the same pattern repeats. Different names, different identifications, same prepaid contact number style, numbers that have no history. And one application stands out because the handwriting is bolder, more confident, like the person was tired of pretending. The signature at the bottom is a scrawl that could be anything, but the listed employer line, the part most people fill without thinking, says print and copy. It is a tiny vanity, a tiny slip. You ask for surveillance? This store has better cameras, better angles. You watch the footage, and there he is, again. Work boots, clean jacket, moving like he is clocking in. He opens boxes, pulls envelopes, sorts them in his car. And this time, he looks up long enough for the camera to take his face. Not perfect, but enough. Enough for the Secret Service liaison to run it through databases, driver license images, old arrests, anything. The computer churns through possibilities, and you sit there listening to the printer hum in the next room. A few minutes later, the liaison exhales. He says the face is familiar, but not from local records. He says it might be from another jurisdiction. He says it might be from a prior counterfeiting case that never stuck. He says the problem with counterfeiters is they travel light. They change names like socks. They leave you chasing a face through bad camera footage and paperwork. You ask what you do with a face. He says you share it. So you do. You send the still to financial institutions in the region. You send it to local police departments. You send it to Port Authority security. You feel like you are putting up a wanted poster in a world that stopped reading bulletin boards. Then, slowly, something comes back. A patrol officer in a neighboring city recognizes him from a traffic stop months ago. No arrest, just a warning, expired tabs. But the stop produced a name and a date of birth, at least what he claimed. You run that name, and it is thin. A couple of addresses, a utility hookup, a rental application. All of it feels like paper laid down to look real. But one address ties to a storage facility near the freeway, and storage facilities are where people put the parts of themselves they do not want in their living room. You get a warrant for the unit because by now, you are living on warrants like caffeine. When you arrive, the storage facility is quiet. Rows of metal doors, wind pushing grit along the asphalt. You unlock the unit with a bolt cutter, the sound sharp in the cold air. Inside, the smell hits you first. Dust, cardboard, and that faint chemical toner scent you now associate with lies. The unit is half full, boxes labeled with marker, office equipment under moving blankets, a cheap folding table, and in the back, a printer, wrapped in plastic like it is being preserved. You step closer and peel the plastic back. Laser printer, a model known for taking specialty cartridges. You open the side panel and find a magnetic toner cartridge still seated. The liaison lets out a breath you can hear. He says, "This is it," or "It is close." You find blank check stock in a sealed box. 2 boxes, actually. One box has a Service Bureau label still on it, half torn. You find a binder, not as thick as the one in the shop, but familiar. Bank names, hold thresholds, notes about branch hours, and a list of employer names, some crossed out, some circled, like targets, but Rick is not there. No body, no person, no breathing thief. Just the tools he thought he had time to come back for, which means he left in a hurry, but not in panic. He did not abandon everything. He abandoned what he could replace. You search for fingerprints, and you get a few usable hits this time, because storage units are not wiped down like crime scenes in movies. You send them off, you bag the printer, you seize the stock, you take the binder, and you stand in the doorway for a second, looking out at the rows of identical units. Because this is what it comes down to, most of the time. Not a dramatic confrontation. A garage of secrets behind a padlock. You go back to the interview room with a recruiter later that day. You do not tell him everything. You tell him enough. You tell him you found a printer and stock in a storage unit tied to a name he knows. You show him a photo of the unit contents. Just one, enough to make his eyes widen. He asks if Rick is caught. You tell him no, but you tell him Rick is now moving without his tools, and a counterfeiter without tools is either quitting or getting desperate. The recruiter's shoulders slump, just slightly. He says, he is not going to quit. You ask why. He says,